We chose to write and illustrate a picture book for our senior project.
So that we each had a different role, we incorporated the 4 languages that we speak: Italian, French, Spanish, and English.
We decided to write an origin story because it would be engaging and we can incorporate a moral. The target audience is children about 4 to 6 years old.
Originally, for the illustrations, we planned to make female clay characters and photograph them in natural landscapes. Because our story involves many physical changes to the animals, the difficulties involved with attaching different body parts to the animals proved that clay was not the best medium for this project.
We then decided to photograph cutout characters that we would draw in natural landscape to keep the multimedia aspect of our original idea. However, it was difficult to find landscapes in Sewickley that we could use as the savannah.
The story itself also evolved as we worked on it. At first, each character had a flaw that had to be overcome for them to change physically, but we could not easily translate this idea into the story.
When we sent our first draft to our mentor, Amy Rose Rotrek, who is an established children's book author, she suggested many revisions, which included taking out extraneous events to reduce word count to the standard 500 to 700 words and to move the action along quicker.
She also shared her knowledge about the format of picture books, such as the standard 32 pages of illustrations.
Our mentor Amy offered many insights into the process of writing and publishing a children's book. Usually, publishers prefer for manuscripts not to come with illustrations. It's common for publishers to pair a well-known author with a new illustrator, or vice versa, for marketing purposes. You can give illustrators notes, but publishers prefer those to be sparingly used. A good picture book has text that can stand on its own and allows the illustrator room to interpret. We also looked at several published picture books to get the feel of the tone, visual layout, and length. Cheap, written by Julie Stiegmeyer and illustrated by Carol Baker McKee, showcased multimedia illustrations and very few words. It is geared towards a younger audience than we intended to address, but it offered interesting alternatives to hand-drawn illustrations.
Gobble Gobble Crash, also written by Julie Stiegmeyer but illustrated by Valerie Gorbachev, contains a story that could stand alone, but the illustrations add to the tone of the story.
Xochitl and the Flowers is a multilingual book that we looked at when planning the layout of our own story. However, we decided to have our characters speak in different languages instead of writing the entire story in each different language. Amy also shared some handouts from her graduate school class on children's books, which included advice such as only including pictures of what the story can't say. If we were to actually submit our book to a publisher, we probably wouldn't also submit the illustrations. Our final book does not follow all of these guidelines that Amy mentioned.
It's self-published, so we decided to first break up our text into the 32 pages, and then we drew illustrations based on those sections.
Once we had all of the illustrations, we took digital pictures of them rather than scanning them into the computer to make sure that they were bright enough to see once we put them onto the website. We used PicMonkey to superimpose the text and speech bubbles onto the images, and all of these techniques are uncommon, but they worked for us because we were self-publishing our book in 2 weeks.
Amy's experience with writing Young Wizard's Handbook was rather unique, because it was a craft and activity book rather than a traditional picture book. She says that she wrote the manuscript first and didn't think too much about the illustrations. When it came time to illustrate, she had a very unusual experience. Since the company that published Young Wizard's Handbook also handles the Dungeons & Dragons games, they had a lot of stock art that they could use, since they'd already paid for it. She was sent files of all of the pictures that they could have for free, and selected ones that were appropriate. Her team had a budget for new art as well, and the publisher found an illustrator to draw pictures to accompany the story where stock artwork didn't fit. There weren't many new photos used for the Young Wizard's Handbook. They had less than 20 new pictures in that book. Here is the final product of our book.
Our story takes place on the present-day continent of Africa, in a savanna.
How the Fennec fox, zebra, warthog, and elephant came to be, an origin story. We wrote this book under the pen name Wren Hamilton.
There were once 4 animals traveling on a boat.
There was a fox. Buongiorno, mi chiamo Volpe.
There was a horse. Hello, my name is Horse.
There was a pig. Bonjour, je m'appelle Porc.
And there was a bull. Hola, me llamo Toro.
They could not understand each other. Dove il bagno? Where's the bathroom? Je ne comprends pas.
No comprendo. I don't understand.
But they soon had other problems. The ocean rocked their boat.
Oh my! Dios mío!
Dio mio! Mon Dieu!
The storm overturned their boat. Help me! Ayúdeme!
Aiutami! Aide-moi!
They washed ashore. When they got back on their feet, they wandered around, lost. ¿Dónde estoy? Where am I?
Dove sono io? Où est-ce que je suis?
Eventually, they found a savanna.
Oh, sate!
I'm thirsty.
J'ai soif.
Tengo sed. They came upon a sparkling watering hole.
They all sipped the water. It tingled like fizzing bubbles.
Sienten la sensación de hormigueo. Do you all feel that? I can understand you now.
Posso capirti adesso. Je peux te comprendre maintenant.
Pig began to cry. ¿Por qué estás llorando, cerdo? Why are you crying, Pig?
J'ai très chaud. I'm very hot.
Bull felt sorry for Pig. He stood in front of the sun to provide some shade in which Pig could sit, but the sun was still in Pig's eyes.
Bull tried to stretch his ears to create more shade. His ears tingled and began to grow. His tusks moved down to make way for his large ears.
¡Qué perfecto! Ahora puedes sentarte a la sombra y puede avivarte. How perfect! Now you can sit in my shade and I can fan you.
Merci beaucoup, mais j'ai soif aussi. Et je suis trop fatiguée à aller au abreuvoir. Thank you very much, but I'm also thirsty, and I'm too tired to go to the watering hole.
Puedo traerte agua del abrevadero. I can bring you water from the watering hole.
The bull trotted over to the watering hole. He bent down to scoop water into his newly grown ears. The water just rolled off.
He tried to stretch his nose. His nose tingled and grew into a trunk. He filled his trunk with water to bring to Pig.
Pig smiled and smiled. He smiled so much that his smile could not grow any bigger.
Suddenly, tusks popped out from his face. They made his smile seem even wider.
Merci, mon petit chou. Thank you, my friend. Meanwhile, Horse and Fox wandered through the shrubs looking for food.
Fox's ears tingled. She heard growling behind her and called out to Horse.
Stai attento, cavallo! Watch out, Horse!
Horse whipped her head around. Get behind me, Fox. Maybe if I stand really still, that lioness will not notice us.
Horse's whole body tingled. The lioness looked right at them, but it didn't come after them. Tu mi hai salvato dalla leonessa, e adesso tu hai le strisce sulla tua pelliccia. You saved me from the lioness, and now you have stripes on your fur.
Horse looked down and gasped. That's why the lion didn't chase us. I blended right in with the shrubs, and your ears have grown. That must be why you heard the lioness coming.
They made their way back to the others.
The four animals sat in the shade of a jackalberry tree and enjoyed the leaves and fruit.
And that is how the fennec fox, zebra, warthog, and elephant came to live together.
El fin. The end.
La fine. La fin.